So last week on Wednesday we were discussing on this mindfulness, and particularly on the right mindfulness. As I said, that this right mindfulness, it has to come with the right view, in order that the direction of the mindfulness, it's all towards liberation, towards nibbana, towards the cessation of dukkha. And we discussed on the basic understanding on this mindfulness, in the sense that we need to arouse it when the time comes. You need to arouse it when the time comes, and you also need to understand its characteristic, that mindfulness that you are cultivating is the mindfulness, not the concentration. Then, as I said, that the first few things that for basic understanding of mindfulness, when you're cultivating it, is to recognize its characteristics, in the sense that one of these characteristics is that the presentness of the mind, that your mind is present, and your mind is that have that heightened clarity or heightened awareness. So both of it has to come together. So when they come together, then at least when you are meditating, you know that that is the mindfulness has already being aroused at this moment of time. And also, as I mentioned, that when we are cultivating mindfulness, on a practical level, there are two parts of it. One is that you must know how to arouse it. That means by seeing its characteristics and so on. And then the second part of the mindfulness is that to sustain it, to maintain it, and to develop it further. That is again is another skill that we have to understand and also know how to develop too. So for today, also for tonight too, that I'm still speaking on the arousing part, how to arouse this mindfulness in order for us to able to do vipassana or samatha meditation. As I said, if you have mindfulness, your mind is at least on the wholesome side, or at least on the right side. If there's no mindfulness, that means all forms of meditation, all form of mental cultivation will be problematic, or it is connected with some defilements. So therefore, it is important that we understand its characteristic. So now we further look into the nature of this mindfulness. One of the usual way of looking at mindfulness is usually, especially when you go through the Abhidhamma classes, or especially when you go through some theory about the mindfulness, they will tell you about the characteristic, lakkhana. They will tell you about its function, or rasa in Pali. And then you have the manifestation, and then after that you have the proximate cause. But all these things are just words. All these are words, and sometimes there's no description of it when it comes to when you're going through those books or going through the text. So it is important that we able to put the words into the practice, or even when you are already done some practices, then you understand when mindfulness is already arisen at one time, or perhaps that you have done something that you can't relate that activity of yours or that mental state of yours is connected with mindfulness. So sometimes we have theory is one side, practice is one side, but we cannot put them together. We cannot put them together. And it is important that at least for us to know that when we are meditating, at least the theory and the practice, especially when you can connect them, then it makes the meditation more interesting, more joyful, and then there's more confidence in the practice, and then therefore you will go further. Now, one of the characteristic of mindfulness that we're going to discuss further is on the what we call apilana, apilapana. Wait, we share the screen here. Yes. The word usually when we use for mindfulness, its characteristic means apilapana. Literally means non-floating away, or in the context of practice, it means non-superficial. So this word also, it's very similar to the word appamada. And this word appamada, it's where we use it quite a lot in the suttas and also in the practice. When it comes to mindfulness as non-floating away, as non-superficial, it means that the mind has to be there, really there. Other words are the word apilana is equivalent to heightened awareness. But the thing is that when you read the suttas or you read the commentary, they use the word apilana, non-floating or non-superficial. Then a lot of times we try to understand what it means by non-superficial or non-floating, and then sometimes the commentary will comment further that we are sinking to the object. Sinking to the object. Sometimes it makes the thing even more confusing, and sometimes even comes into the practice. Then the yogi thought that you have to really have to push it, and sometimes they over push it, push it in order to, as if you are drilling it through, drilling it through your object, especially when you are meditating in the vipassana, that you thought that you are drilling through it and then you try to penetrate it and so on. They thought that the word sinking is like that. But sinking is not in that sense. Sinking means you are having that heightened awareness. You clearly know what you are doing. So therefore, it is not the superficial type of awareness of the everyday awareness. Those everyday awareness is called superficial. But when you are alert, when you are clear, when you have that attentiveness, then it comes as apilana. That means there's a certain degree of mindfulness is there. So for example, as I said, when you are handling something dangerous, maybe you are handling hot water. If you're handling a hot water, and then you have to be very careful, you have to put attention there, then it means your mind having that alertness, the attentiveness. That means mindfulness is there. Although the mindfulness, we have those mindfulness in everyday life, which is good, which is wonderful, which is, and again, it's wholesome. That is wonderful. And then we want to bring that type of alertness, that clarity into our walking, into our sitting, into our, when we are meditating, into all those daily activities. But the thing is that whether we can able to sustain it or not, that is another thing. But at least we know that attentiveness, that carefulness of noticing, then this is what we call apilana, non-superficial. That means the mind is really alert, attentive, careful in the noting. That means the mind is heightened in its awareness. That is called apilana. Here the word non-floating here and also non-superficial here. Sometimes the yogis, especially when it comes into vipassana yogi, they overstretch it. That means they overshoot it. Overshoot it means that sometimes, for example, let's say, take a simple example like the pain. They are noticing the pain as the Vedana, Anupassana, Satipatthana. They watch the pain, they see the pain, and so on. But sometimes for some yogis, when they see the pain, the mind is already clear, the mind is already alert. But they thought that sometimes they're being taught that the pain must have a core. Every pain must have a core. They have that type of idea. So they try to search for the core of the pain, and then therefore they drill the mind drill it in, and then they still find no core. Then after that, the whole mind goes into a lot of thinking, a lot of tension, a lot of problems. So, in other words, they are overshooting the whole thing, overshooting the whole object. So, what is important here is that when your object is clear to you, that means your in-breath, out-breath is clear to you. That means you can able to follow it in, you can follow it out. You follow the rising, falling in, you can follow rising, falling out, and you put the labeling there. You can notice the pain clearly. You can notice the hardness or softness of the body, whichever that's coming out during this time, whichever is clear to you. Then when you put your attention there, that means this is what we call non-superficial. Non-superficial, or the word apilana, non-floating. So this is important. Now this is important because it's connected to the word appamada, just like I'm showing you right now in the screen here. Now the appamada here, it's again, this is the last word of the Buddha, appamada sampadeta. You can find it in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. So here, the word is non-heedlessness, as you translate it into English, or non-negligence. If you put it in a more positive way, then it's heedfulness. Or you put it in this one, non-negligence means like carefulness, attentiveness in that sense also. So the pamada here, here it's heedlessness, negligence, or carelessness. Here there are three types of heedlessness or negligence here. The first one is and the Buddha used this a lot. The Buddha used this quite a lot, especially when then we have the first type, second type. Quite a lot they use this one. So the first type is the negligence of one's virtue or one's dana or kindness. That means here when Puthujjana or a lay devotee, or then if they do not have any form of learning of the Dhamma or something that is some teachings that is wholesome, then they will not do any form of dana. They will not have any form of virtue. They will do killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and so on. They have no kindness, no humbleness, no charitable heart, no generosity, no service to others, and so on. That is called negligence. Negligence of doing even all this wholesomeness, and also abandoning of this unwholesomeness. So all these things also falls under pamada. So this is heedlessness or negligence. Then the second one is the negligence of the sense restraint. here the senses here, again, it falls under the 5 senses or the 6 senses. So if you want to put it in as the mind also. So here the sense restraint is that especially when you are a monk or when you are a yogi or a nun, especially when you come into the meditation part, and then the sense restraint also is as important. Because if you don't have that sense restraint, then it will, if you look at it, you look into their particulars, you look into their forms, you look into their signs, and then all kinds of defilements will spring up. Then you have hard time to meditate. Your mind will go into restlessness or go into sensual desire and so on. So it's difficult for you to meditate during this time. So too, like when we are also, especially when monks, even when we are not in retreat also, but we also must have that sense restraint in many things that we do. For example, when we go out also, we don't have to look here and there and so on, or listen to here and there, or smell and so on. So too for you all also, it's the same. Sometimes you have to be careful of your senses. If we are not careful with our senses, a lot of times we'll be looking for something pleasant, something nice, something good, something tasty, something nice to hear. Every now and then they're looking for food. Every now and then you want to go for nice food. The ambience also must be nice. There must be some aircon or AC around. The ambience must be not too bright, not too noisy. The cushion and everything will be pleasant. There must be a view, for example, those type of things. So a lot of people seeking for this type of pleasure a lot. So as a practitioner, of course, once in a while, if you have those enjoyment, it's okay, not to say it's terribly bad. But well, as of course, it's still sensual desire. But since if you are a lay person, then once in a while, if you do that, it's not a problem. Don't feel too guilty about it, But if you keep on doing it, if you're obsessing with it, of those things, then you got to be careful. For example, if you love to listen to some songs, then you get obsession about those songs. Then you got to be careful. If you're watching your Korean drama, and you get so engrossed with it, then also you got to be careful. Because some people watch, and then one drama finish, and then after that continue another one, whether they are ironing their clothes also watch, and then while they're in the front of the dinner time also watch. Sometimes not enough, they go in the toilet, they take out the mobile phone or the tablet, also watch inside there. Become so obsessive with all these sights and sounds and so on. So therefore it is important that we know how to restrain. We restrain for certain degree in order for the mind to stay calm and not to say tremendously calm, but at least the mind is not so running and not so distracted in so many things. So do be careful. So at least we must have certain degree of sense restraint in our life, even you are a lay person. What more than if you are a monk or a nun. So lay person also, you need certain degree of sensual restraint. Okay. Now, the third one is very important, especially when you come into the meditation. The thoroughness of noting. The thorough or thorough. Thorough is it's a US pronunciation. Thorough is more of a British pronunciation. After all, here in Malaysia, it's once upon a time is long live the Queen, or long live the King. So So negligence in the thoroughness in noting. So here, especially when you come into a vipassana, then that means if you don't put a heightened attention, a clear attention into your observing your object, and then if you just superficially just know, it's just an in-breath, out-breath, just superficially, you just know the rising, falling, and you do not want to see it more clearly, then it's called negligence in that sense, apamada also. So even when you comes into your samatha objects, that means if you have to be continuous in the sense of you can able to follow the words. Let's say if you are doing metta, you can able to, may I be free from harm and danger. Don't let the mind go around, and then make sure that you are there able to follow it. You're able to follow these things, and then you follow it as long as the metta starts coming up. Then you'll be aware of the heart of metta, of the emotion of metta that is coming up, and you feel good. If you feel openness is coming in, then some sort of metta is coming in, the initial part of the metta. So aware of that, the nature of that metta as it's coming up, and then take note of it again and again. Then that's where the metta will start to prolong. If the metta starts to prolong, that means the mindfulness also starts to prolong. So here it is important that we have this superficial, non-superficial apilapana. So this one, it is important for us to take note of it. So again, in coming into the future talks also, all these things will start to blend in together. We're going to blend in together. When we are meditating, it's not so easy for us to go and split hair over, this is concentration, this is mindfulness, this is wisdom, and it's not so easy to split hair. But once in a while, this type of its character, sometimes it become more prominent for a short while, and then you may able to notice them. So in the beginning part now, if you want to have that non-negligence in your practice, meditation, and also like non-superficial and so on, then it is important that again I emphasize on the walking meditation or standing meditation. It is good that that's walking meditation or standing meditation, if you do it a little bit more, and you pay attention to how you walk. Usually for a lot of you, if you have not gone through the Vipassana meditation, especially in the Mahasi method, in the Mahasi method, the walking meditation is to be taken seriously. But then again, there are people who don't take it seriously. If you don't take it seriously, first thing that you're not going to have, or you're not going to have much of it, is mindfulness. It means the very first, most important part that you cannot able to arouse it, and you want to bring into your sitting and doing other things, then it's going to be very slow. So a lot of times, my emphasis is that in the beginning part, especially for a beginner, or if you are beginning in the meditation, in the sense that you're just coming into a retreat, or you want to start a retreat, even though you have some past experiences of other retreats and so on. But if you are starting a retreat, that walking meditation, it's utmost important. You have more or less, you don't have much of a substitute for it. You got to, and that is where you got to arouse a lot of mindfulness there. So therefore, you start off with a one-phase walking meditation, and then go into the two-phase, and you do the three-phase also. First phase, you notice just the right step, left step, just to let the mind be aware of what you are doing. Not need to be too deep yet, but you slowly bring the mind into a more deeper state. Then you go into a two-phase. And you go into a two-phase, you're aware of its lifting and dropping of each leg. Each leg, and you slow down your movement, and then you pay attention to how it lifts and how it drops. And then once in a while, you notice its hardness and its softness, its warmness. It's quite clear, actually, if you begin to pay attention to them. And then after that, you go into a bit more slower, go into three phase: lifting, pushing, dropping. Then that time you go slower, you pay even more closer attention to notice what is really going on with the whole process of lifting or pushing or dropping. Of course, right now, today, I'm not going to go into talk into all this technique and so on, but just to give you an understanding for those who have not done it before. And this is where a lot of mindfulness, and as the mindfulness comes up, and it becomes continuous, that also the right concentration also will come together with it. So you don't have to worry about too much about right concentration, because as long as you have that mindfulness, then the right concentration will start coming together. So usually in the Mahasi method, we do that, and it's a very effective for arousing mindfulness. So a lot of time people don't, as I said, a lot of time people neglect this part, and then they just want to sit down. And most of the time, when you start to sit down without much of mindfulness, you'll automatically, or most of the time, yogis will fall into calmness, fall into over concentration. Then the mind become calm, peaceful, and then after that, nothing much, because of the mindfulness is not there. All right. So make a bit of habit to do some walking meditation. Even like daily practice that I've gone through, that I go through. I just come down to go and walk a little bit. Sometimes not too slow, sometimes a bit faster. Just walk a little bit, just to get the mind synchronized with the movement. Once it's synchronized with the movement, that means the mindfulness starts coming in. So it is important for us to do a little bit of walking before we're doing sitting, especially when you are at home. So when we are in the retreat, then we take an hour to finish that walking meditation. And that walking meditation, we really do it as a meditation, not just some supportive for sitting and so on. It is a meditation on its own. It has got its own technique. It has got its own way of noticing and how you're going to sustain it, and when you're going to supposed to walk faster, when you're supposed to walk slower, when you're going to change your pace, how you're going to bring that whole mindfulness into the sitting meditation. All these things are all, techniques. And that technique is really important. Because a lot of time people know theory about mindfulness, able to develop mindfulness, but when it comes to the technique of it, they have not much of it. So therefore, they cannot able to sustain the mindfulness. They can arouse the mindfulness, but they cannot sustain the mindfulness. So the technique has to come in order for you to able to sustain the mindfulness at least longer than what you can do before. So that is important. So the word here, apilana, apamada or apilana here. Now the next characteristics I would like to go through is this. Maybe we're going to talk about this one later on. Asammosa, non-confusion, non-forgetfulness. This is the function here. Here, that means, again here, as I said, the word they use, the word Pali, it's remembering. Usually when in the Pali, as I said, the term of mindfulness has two terms, generally has two terms. One is the trying to remember something, that you're trying to recall something from the past. The second one is the present state of mind. And both of them are very, very well connected. So that means, let's say for in terms of you try to remember the instruction, or you try to remember You want to recall back the things that you have done in the past. That means that during that time, the mind is not confused or not drifted away into other things. That means that your mind is attentive. Your mind is attentive so that in the future you can able to recall back, to remember. Your mind is not confused in that sense. Here, when we comes into the practice, non-forgetfulness, it means that it's non-forgetfulness of the meditation object. That you are not forgetful about your meditation object. If you are forgetful, that means your mind is already drifted into thoughts, for example, into thinking. You're supposed to do your metta, for example. You're supposed to do your metta, may I be free from harm and danger, but then your mind drifted into the char kway teow you ate this morning or you ate yesterday. Where did I go? And then you start thinking about all the things. That means here is called, you begin to forget about your object of your meditation. You're supposed to notice your rising, falling of your abdomen, but then you drifted into all kinds of things. So that is called forgetfulness. Your mind is confused with all kinds of no, the word confusion may not be so this one enough, because it's just that the mind is not attentive. The mind is not attentive on the object, but it's in a way that it's attentive in the wrong objects or in the wrong things, in delighting into sound, into hearing, into smelling. So this is what we call when you begin to forget. So when you are not forgetting, that means when you're aware of it, then it's wonderful. It is good. Sometimes you see this non-forgetfulness, especially when you change from forgetfulness to non-forgetfulness. Especially when you are drifted into your thoughts, and then suddenly you remember that you are supposed to meditate. Then your whole mind drifted it back to your main object or to a suitable object of your meditation. So when it drifted back, then you can see a contrast. The contrast between when you are forgetting, when you are drifted into all kinds of nonsense, into all kinds of sensual desire, anger, and so on. Then when they are over, or they are cut off somehow in the middle, and then you come back to the present object. In the beginning of the practice, when you begin your samatha or vipassana, in the beginning part, your mind, when it's drifted away, it's going to be long. Or most of it is going to be long. Long means like sometimes you can sit there for 1 hour. You can drift there, you can be drifted away for 55 minutes or 1 hour. The moment you sit down, you thought that you're going to watch your in-breath, out-breath, or you want to watch your rising, falling, then you drift into thinking, fantasizing, imagination. Then after that, it goes into sleepiness, drowsiness. After that, you wake up again and back again to all the thinking. After that, the bell ring. Oh, 1 hour passed already, so fast today. In the beginning part, most of us, 99.9% of us will be like that. Nowadays, during the Buddha's time, maybe not. Nowadays is that you get very difficult to find people who have spiritually advanced from a past life, then they come down into here. So not so easy to find, but still there are out there. But mostly is that your mind is drifted into thoughts, thinking, sleepiness, drowsiness, and so on. So we make the effort, we strive, we keep on making the effort again and again to bring about that mindfulness. Sometimes we drift, when that 1 hour gone, let it go. Try again, day in, day out, you try again. When you comes into a retreat, even when you are a full-time meditator, full-time meditator means at 4 o'clock you wake up, 10 o'clock you sleep in the evening, not at night, 4 a.m. in the morning. So you sleep about 6 hours only, around there, 5-6 hours only, enough. After all, you'll be sleeping in the meditation also. Plus minus also come out to 6 hours already, especially in the beginning part. So so a lot of you may not able to sustain it. Out of so many sittings that you're going to go through, if let's say you have 7 sittings per day, 6 sittings will not be clear for you. Or 6.5 sitting maybe not be clear to you. And you should not give up. This is the beginner's practice. A lot of times when a yogi does not understand this, or a beginner yogi does not understand it, they want to go into a meditation with all the faith and everything. But then after the 3 days, 4 days, how come my meditation is so bad? 3 days, 4 days or so, I'm still so sleepy. But I look at other people, they walk so nice, or they speak so well. And here I am, such a lousy yogi, lousy meditator. This thing I hear a lot of times already, a lot of, in many ways, So we understand that it's difficult for many of us, but it's the perseverance that you have to go through. You have to persevere. If you got to break it through, and if not, you go back again. You try the next retreat again. You will come back to the same result. All you need to do is to make sure that you pass through the 3 or 4 days or 5 days, depending on how tired you are and what sort of this one. And therefore, it is good that when you want to go for a first retreat, go for at least like 10 days or 2 weeks. First 7 days, you're going to knock out. No mindfulness, nothing. So only on the 7 day, 8 day, 9 day, 9 day, you're already thinking of going back already. So maybe it's 7 day, 8 day, you see some result. But when you see that result, this is great for beginner because it instills that confidence in you. It instills the faith in you, in the mental development, in the meditation. That means that you know that it can be done. You have to see for yourself. And many yogis, I recommend to them is that to make sure that you don't come in for 3 days or 4 days retreat. Make sure you come for a 10 days retreat. Next time when we are open. So in the past, if you just go for 3 days, 4 days retreat, not enough. You'll be bombarded by all kinds of hindrances. And then after that, you lose confidence. Meditation is so difficult. I meditate so many days, so many times I go, pun tak boleh. Go also cannot. Because every time you go is 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, 4 days. It's like the plane trying to, you run from the runway and it's like to fly. Then you have to pass through the clouds before you see the sunshine and you see clear the rain and so on. You always come through into the clouds and then you cannot break any more further. So make sure you persevere and pass it through. Because for a lot of you, a number of you that I've seen over here in the Zoom, and a number of you have done a number of retreats, and you have seen it for yourself, and you have that confidence. But for some people, they do not have that confidence at all, because they haven't gone through it. So my job is to make sure that for those who have not done it before, make sure that you do that next time in the future. Then you see that your mind becomes clear. That means your mind becomes clear, then that means mindfulness starts coming in more regularly, better. Only 7 days, you only begin to see some clear mindfulness is there. You think just sit down, you just sit down or walk a little bit, you think the mindfulness come in very clearly for you. No. Most of us will not get that. Only I said 7 days, 10 days, then only you see that, especially for beginner practitioner. So So you will not, so as I said, this one, the samosa here, said non-forgetfulness, non-confusion, that means you are not confused, your mind is clear, your mind is attentive, your mind is have that heightened awareness. Then this is, you're not drifted into all kinds of hindrances and so on. Now, when it comes into a more deeper practice, if you are a yogi who practice more deeply, and you have have a number of retreats in hand, then when you see this non-forgetfulness has a much more clearer meaning. That time, your hindrances may not be, it's not that long like when you are beginner practice. It may come in like just a minute or 2 minutes, Then it's sort of like your mind comes back to the meditation object. And if you go further into the meditation, even that little bit of the mind want to try to run into that thinking, the mindfulness already stop you. Then that it doesn't go into that thoughts, go into that sleepiness. You know the sleepiness is around, you know the thought is at the background already, but the mindfulness knows it stays there and it back again to the object again. Again and again it stays there. That's where you'll see that the mindfulness, it's how it operates. It's very different when you are a beginner practitioner or when you meditate further into the meditation. So the forgetfulness of your meditation object become very little. Sometimes in the whole hour that you sit, or 2 hours that you sit, or the 1 hour that you walk, your mind doesn't drift at all. It's totally onto the object of your meditation, even if you are a vipassana meditator in that sense. So we've seen yogis could be able to do that. We've seen not just one, not just two, many yogis who have done this before, they can able to do that, and the whole hour is without all these hindrances. Even if it comes in, it maybe come in as 1%, 2%, or 5%, and 95% is alertness. So actually you have come a long way if you can able to do that. From 95% of hindrances, now only when you come 5% or 0% of hindrances while sitting. So you have come a long way. It takes a lot of practice just to do like this. So this is non-forgetfulness. Again, here another one is the manifestation is called the confrontation of the object. Now the confrontation of the object here, it's called face-to-face. Bimukha in the Pali word, but after that there are some other words around. Bimukha, face-to-face. Mukha like that in the Malay word is face also, Bimukha means face to face, two face together. Then here, you see, when mindfulness is there, when you say heightened awareness, in other words, is that the attention goes near the object. If you have an object here, the attention goes near the object. But the mindfulness does not dissect the object, does not discern the object. The discernment will be done by who? Wisdom. It doesn't hold the object. The holding the object or unifying the object is the function of concentration. The job of mindfulness is just go near it. So every aspect of the mind, of the mental state, is to go near the object, give it the full attention and stabilize that object at that moment of time. Then your mind then the wisdom will begin to discern. This is hard, very hard, not so hard. The hard change to this way, that way, because the mind is near the object. If the mind is far from the object, that means you do not know how the hardness is changing. You do not know how the movement is changing. You do not know what is going on with the object because your mind is far away. So the word is confrontation or face to face with the object here. So again here is another word of non-superficial. It's another word of non-superficial. It's just sometimes in the meditation we have to use a number of words because mindfulness doesn't show you one aspect of it. It shows you a different aspect of it. So too when you come to wisdom, and also when you come to concentration, it shows you a different aspect of it. It doesn't show you one way of how concentration will work or how one way mindfulness will work. That's why it is important for us to understand it slightly differently. Therefore, when we aware of the mindfulness, then one of its characteristics will be clear to you. You may not be able to see all, but sometimes one of it become clearer. Another time, another characteristic become clearer. And then you know that, this time mindfulness is already there. So the next one is this araka. Araka means guarding. Guarding of what? Guarding here is guarding the senses. All the 6 senses is guard. Just like we are restraining the earlier part of it, the middle negligence of sense restraint. That means when there's mindfulness, then that is guarding the senses. Now we talk about guarding the senses when we are talking about the morality, restraint of the senses. So restraining here or guarding here, that means when it comes to everyday life. Earlier on, we give you a number of examples. But when you come into a meditation, also, the guarding of the senses has to become a little bit more subtle. Because the senses here, you see, your mind loves to run about. When you come into meditation, you are trying to put a lot of this guardian around the senses and so on. But the hindrances still want to push through it, Just sometimes, just take for example, when you are doing a walking meditation. The walking meditation, a lot of time people doing walking meditation, and then they like to look at things. They like to look at the flowers, they like to look at the squirrel, they like to look at the leaves, like to look at the trees, and especially they finished that. They finished. You're walking to and fro. At the end of the walking, you are standing. But the thing is that a lot of time, yogi doesn't really mindful of their senses. They begin to look at all these trees and clouds and birds flying and so on. Because there's nothing else for you to look at. There's nothing else like a TV is not there, or there's nothing much is there. Everything, even the trees also fascinate you. Even the little bird also fascinate you. Hey, how come I never noticed this bird before? So colorful. But when you are everyday life, you don't even want to bother about all these birds. In everyday life, that tree also you don't want to bother. But then when you are retreat, that tree also so intriguing to you, so interesting to you. Somehow or another, the hindrances needs to go out. You see, small little thing, they begin to, anyway, if you are not careful, it begins to grow and grow. Talking about growing, there are, I've seen also nuns and their meditation in the meditation center, which is sometimes when they're a bit lax in this meditation center. They're supposed to meditating and so on, And then after that, after staying for too long already, or long enough, then they start growing, not growing in mindfulness, but start to growing flowers around their kuti. Oh, they have this flower, that flower, they start to grow flowers. And then after that, they have to clear the weeds. After that, you want to pour water, and then want to trim a little bit. Oh, they look at the flowers, so nice, so beautiful. What? You see, supposed to meditation, you're supposed to grow your mindfulness and grow your wisdom, and you go to all these things. Yeah. The senses delighting into all these type of things. But we don't think that this is, after all, this is not unwholesome. After all, just growing the plants only, where is the unwholesomeness is there? I didn't do killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. I'm taking care of my 8 precept. But I'm still virtuous. We kind of like, we console ourselves, but the actual practice itself, we don't really do it. So we have to guard the senses. If you don't guard the senses, the mind will start, starts to think, starts to plan, starts to create, starts to imagine, and you start to do all kinds of things. So this one, you've got to be careful. Yeah, you've got to be careful whenever we are meditating. So be careful of your senses. Yeah, hearing, seeing, smelling, and so on. So especially when you are doing metta meditation or doing samatha meditation, also it's good that don't fall into all kinds of music around. When you're aware of the music that's around, bring it back to your main object. Whereas in the vipassana, when the hearing is there, when you hear the music is there, we also learn to accept it, but we are not going into its story. We hear the music, then we're not hearing. Not thinking of who is the singer, not thinking of what music is that, what year is that. Then that means you're going to the science and you're going into its particulars of the sound. So as long as you're just not hearing, you're aware of it, then it doesn't finish. Okay, then only you bring it back to your bodily objects or your main object of your vipassana. But in the beginning part, for vipassana meditator, you got to be aware of them. You got to learn to accept them. If you accept them, you don't get too angry. If you don't accept them, then you get very angry with them. Anger or some annoyance is coming up. Irritation is coming up. Or delight will coming up if you are not careful. So vipassana meditator, you got to learn to accept them as they really are. Whereas a samatha meditator, you're aware also, but you don't stay there. You bring it back to your object of your meditation. So this is called guarding. So the next one is this cause for that mindfulness to arise. The Pali word they use the word tirasanya, strong perception. What do you mean by a strong perception? That means the object is clear to you at that moment of time. Not what you think it should be, but at that moment of time, it is clear to you. This one, I think maybe in the next talk also, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more because there's a lot of confusion of this word tirasanya or strong perception. Now the Mahasi Sayadaw or usually the Mahasi method of vipassana, it says that you have to choose your prominent object. When one object is not prominent, then you got to choose another object that is more prominent to you, so that your mindfulness will grow. This is what it means. Tirasanya, a strong perception, a prominent object. Now, in the meditation, when you want to grow mindfulness, you have to learn to take up a prominent object, even for a samatha meditator also. In the beginning part, for a samatha meditation, your mental objects are not clear to you. And usually you cannot able to sustain it for long. If you are doing like metta, like compassion, karuna, these are all mental objects. So mental objects, they are subtle, they are fickle, and you are trying to fight your attention with hindrances, and you try to fight the present space of yours with thinking, with planning, with all with your sensual desire and everything. These are all also mental, So they're trying to fight for your attention too. So your object is there. So what you need to do for meditation, for samatha meditation, is that you have to need a clear object before you take up this object. So again, the clear object is that you're going to get some mindfulness, especially from walking meditation or standing meditation. So when you don't worry about metta and all this, just arouse that mindfulness first. Then after that, when you have sufficient mindfulness, then you can switch over to metta while you are walking, or you want to switch over to metta when you are sitting. Also can. There's no hard and fast rule that you should do this or that. But you have to understand that mindfulness comes with a very clear object to you at that moment of time. So you try to arouse it a little bit more. Then you see that your mental object also become clear later on. So this is important for us to develop. In the vipassana part here, again here the walking meditation is important. Walking meditation because the objects are clear to you. So sometimes, once in a while, the walking also may not be clear to you. And the steps also, after that you walk here, left step, right step, also you get bored. Same thing. Walk everything same, then you get very bored. Because actually your mind is not really attentive. So what you do is that sometimes you can change object. You change it to your bodily object, not the leg part, but more towards the body, the upper body part. So you keep the walking, then sometimes you can able to notice how the hips are swinging, for example, or the shoulders are moving. You take note of those things, or you can able to take note of how the knees are moving or the thighs are moving. Also, they are also all right, because if they are clear to you, then during that time mindfulness also comes in. Then later part, when your mindfulness become clear, then you bring back to your steps again, lifting, pushing, dropping. You notice the sensation. Then the whole mind becomes alert and active, and the mindfulness become continuous. So there's a number of things that we can do in the walking meditation, then to sustain that mindfulness, so that we choose the prominent object, a clear object. Then mindfulness become very sustainable. Also, this clarity of this object, you see, in the beginning part when you are doing vipassana meditation, if you are doing, let's say, rising, falling, or in breath, out breath, vipassana, beginning part, you look for your main object, okay? You look for your main object, perfectly fine if you watch that thing, rising, falling, in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath. If you want to do that, perfectly all right. Then, if the rising, falling is not clear, then you got to look for another object. Like for example, if your hands touching are clear, if your hands are touching, for example, if they are clear to you, then you notice it. You bring your attention there to notice it as touching. Or if you sit down, you feel your body is warm. That means it's clearer than your rising and falling, or your in breath, out breath. Then you go to notice the warmness of the body. Then you note warmness. You feel its warmness, you accept its warmness. Then this is how we move from one object to another object. That means you choose the most clearest object during that time. Then here, the clarity of this object, in the beginning part is like this. Your object doesn't change so fast. Sometimes it changes slightly faster, sometimes it stays there for a long period of time. But as you grow into the deeper aspect of meditation, the changing of the object is faster. Faster in the sense that you may notice it in breath, out breath a few times, just only a few, but another object is already obvious on its own. Then you have to change to that object. Then after you notice that object a few times, then for example, the itchiness become prominent for a short while. Then you got to learn to shift the mind to that object. And then after that, your rising, falling is clear to you. Then you have to shift back to your rising and falling. On the in-breath, out-breath is clear. Then only you shift again, you shift back there again. Then your thinking is clear and you're not into the story of the thinking and you notice the thinking, how it, then also you begin to notice what is going on. Then that means your mindfulness, it's moving from one object to another object. And people may think that a lot of yogis, when they don't understand this, they thought that that means there's no mindfulness. If there's mindfulness, you cannot supposed to be jumping here and there. And that is wrong understanding. They are thinking from the way of concentration. They are thinking of the way of concentration. So they you see, mindfulness and concentration, they already mix them all up. But mindfulness, you need clear object. That means if the next object become clear to you, you change it to the next object. Sometimes one object is clear to you, but another object is even more clearer. Then you go there too. Even the clear object can be your rising, falling. But after that, the pain become more clearer to you. Then also you go to the pain. We're going to talk about this proximate cause of this object because there's a number of things that I want to go and discuss it through. It's not sometimes as simple as that, as just, a more clearer object you take. But nowadays, I've seen yogis doesn't really do that because of a lot of thoughts and a lot of teachings and everything is coming in, and then yogis get very confused. We're going to talk about that on today's Monday. To go to that on Wednesday. We're going to talk about this tirasanya. So, okay, for tonight, we'll stop here for tonight. We'll continue on Wednesday again. Okay? All right.